Okay, so you finished sanding your aprons and your legs. One thing I want to mention is you want to make sure you get all of the marks out of your legs and your aprons. Any pencil marks, any nicks, you want those out before you glue it together. The next step, we're actually going to glue this together. But if you glue it together and have marks still in it, it's a huge pain to try to get them out because you can't get in the corners as easily. It's just easier on you if you sand it ahead of time. One thing, our table skirts should fit in our legs just fine, but sometimes you'll need to actually take a 1/4-inch chisel and chisel out the end of this so that they slide down far enough so that the skirt doesn't sit above your table leg, because if it sits above, then you're going to have a gap there once you attach your tabletop. You may need it, you may not, but if you do, that's how you'll fix that. For the clamps, I'm going to go ahead and dry fit this, but as far as clamps, when we go to glue this, you're going to want to use clamps, bar clamps that are plastic, not metal. This is a really soft wood, and if you use metal, it will damage your outside finished edge. So make sure you have a pair of plastic bar clamps. So we'll go ahead and dry fit this first before we put the glue in, just to make sure we don't need to adjust anything. We're only going to do 2 sides, and we're going to do opposite sides. So I'm going to grab my table aprons that have the cutout for the figure-8 fasteners, and we'll start with one of them. It's easier, again, make sure that your inside is facing in when you go to put these in the legs. If you put it in this way, it's going to be backwards because this is your outside edge and you have your figure-8 fasteners facing out. So you want to make sure that you're putting them in facing in and that this slot is also facing in on both sides. So we'll go ahead and dry fit it and make sure it actually works. Looks like it fits pretty good. Go ahead and try the other one. Make sure that I have a slit facing up. And that one fits pretty good too. I want to make sure that I can shove this down far enough so that it is not sitting above the edge of this. So I'll adjust that. This is more critical once I actually start gluing. I just want to make sure that the table apron actually goes down far enough, and it looks like it does. So I'll do the same thing with the second one, dry fit it, and then we'll go ahead and glue these together. Okay, I've dry fit all my pieces, and now we're going to actually go ahead and glue them. So I have them laid out with the slots facing up. I made sure my figure-8 fasteners holes are facing up as well. So I'm going to go ahead and put a little glue, just a little bit on this side, and I'll spread it. It is helpful to have a partner when you're gluing it together, because you have one shot at this to get it glued together correctly. So I wipe off any excess glue on here, and then we try to get the glue along the sides as much as possible rather than just dumping it in that strip, so that you actually get glue on both sides of your slit. I'll wipe excess glue off my fingers. So once you have it glued and clamped, you want to make sure you wipe off any excess glue on the outside. If you leave it on there, it will show up through your finish and make your project look nasty in the end. So really pay attention to that. when you're wiping it off. So you saw us measure from here to here when we clamped it. And we do, so when you measure from here to here, whatever this distance is, you want the same distance at the bottom. So this one is 13 3/4, so we want this to be 13 3/4. If it is bowing out, that means your clamp is too far up, and if you move your clamp down just a little bit, it'll pull the legs together. If the legs are bowing in, you'll want to move your clamp down this way just a little bit, and it'll pull the legs out. Do that until you get the same measurement at both ends, and we'll do the same thing for the other side of the table as well. I made sure that I dry fitted them just to make sure they fit. Also, I went over, there was a few glue spots on here after gluing yesterday that I took the sander to again, because it's easier to get to those glue spots before you put the whole thing together. So I went ahead and hit anything that I didn't want to have to sand later on once it was put together. And now I'm going to go ahead and put the aprons in and glue this together. So we're going to use the same technique we did yesterday, just putting a little bit of glue on their apron here, and then trying to drizzle glue down the sides of our slots. So I've clamped it together now just to hold it there while it's gluing, and I'm going to make sure that the table is actually square. So we're going to do the same thing we did yesterday with the side legs. When we glued those together, we're going to measure the top, and this is 13 7/8, and then we want to make sure that this is the same, and this is about 1/4 inch off, which means my legs are going out. So I want to move this clamp down. Okay, so now that I have it clamped, I've made sure that the top measurement here is the same as the measurement at the bottom. So now I'm going to make sure it's square this way. So I'm going to measure across from corner to corner. I'm going to use the inside corners. You can use the outside corners. Just make sure that if you go from an outside corner, that you go to the next outside corner, that you don't go from an outside corner to an inside corner. So this one is 15 5/8, and I want to make sure this measurement is the same. And this one is just about a 1/16 off. So the measurements on here look pretty good. There's only a 1/16 of an inch difference between these two. If there was a bigger gap, I would take the wider side, which would be this side, and I would just take my hands and wrench on it a little bit. The glue has already started setting, so it'll hold it there once you've wrenched on it. So then you'll just measure again, and if you need to wrench on it some more, until it is, both measurements are the same. And then you're good to go. Then you just leave it clamped for at least 30 minutes and let it dry.